What's up, it's Herald, and we've got another update to the Poison Pathfinder build for you here today. Yeah, that's right, we're doing back-to-back build update videos. I don't know what to tell you, I keep bouncing back and forth between playing both this and the Hollow Palm Ritualist. They're both fun builds, they're both better, faster, stronger than they were before. I can like two things at the same time. Immediate example, pizza and hamburgers. They both get a space on my plate, and these builds both get space in my brain, playtime, whatever. So let's get into it, but first be sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and join our Discord as well. We're over 1,300 members and still growing. Alright, so let's talk about what we've been going with the build, and as you can see from some of the footage and me bouncing around, we've added in a Rhoa Mount and Herald of Blood, and these are both in service of making the build clear a lot faster. We've also added in Headhunter, which really helped with the Herald of Blood. So we've had to make some adjustments to some support gems in order to make Herald of Blood work, but basically the way that Herald of Blood works is it does an explosion that has like non-scaling flat damage, and it's like a decent chunk of it, and it does this on any enemy that's bleeding. When it dies, it pops, right? And so we can make that poison by putting poison 3 on it. We can also make that bleed by putting bleed on it. And then we're able to add like Bursting Plague and Overreach and Deadly Poison and all of that stuff to just make it do a fair amount of damage, make it have a large clear area. That Bursting Plague also gives us more clear, and so this makes it so that we have basically automated clear. And also because of that, we've dropped Plague Bearer out, so we're just not using Plague Bearer at all anymore. Honestly, this is fine. One of the things about Plague Bearer that was a little annoying is it does kind of store up some of your poison damage, you know, and then you kind of have this mindset of like, do I need to be spending it whenever I hit 100%, or do I need to just be holding it for like specific uses? And ultimately, I just found that I had eventually reached the point where I was just never using it, and it's like, well, if I'm never using it, why am I wasting 30 spirit on it? Feels like a pretty bad use of a resource, and Herald of Blood makes it so that it's just much easier for us to get like big bursts of clearing damage at where we can just fire one arrow into a pack of enemies, and then just allow that to just kind of cascade a combination of both bleed and poison through packs of enemies and clear them all out. This bleed propagation, in conjunction with us still being a Pathfinder, still having contagious contamination, spreading poison all over the place as well, just makes it really, really easy to clear, not just like off screen, but like around corners and like stacks of monsters that are spawning in regularly through, you know, whatever mechanic, ritual or breach or something. You're at the edge of a breach, you could like fire an arrow and have it kind of rolling a wave of death. So what we've done in order to make this work, since you have to have bleed in there somewhere, is rather than getting a bunch of bleed chance throughout the build, we've just added bleed onto Poison Burst Arrow. Poison Burst Arrow does a pretty good amount of physical damage. This obviously benefits very heavily from the fact that we have physical damage on both of our rings and our gloves, and you know, a lot of physical damage on our bow. We actually get a decent sized bleed. It's not like huge or anything, but it's enough to cause that bleed rippling through packs of enemies. But, you know, this also means that we kind of want to drop multi-shot as well. So that's exactly what I've done. We're still running Bursting Plague and bleed and Deadly Poison and Heft on our Poison Burst Arrow. You know, we're really trying to get big physical damage. But the only clear oriented gem that I'm using on this now is Fork. Just because when you fire an arrow into a pack of enemies, now it can turn into 2 arrows, and then those can splash and propagate that more of that bleeding and Bursting Plague and Deadly Poison and so on around packs. So the build is clearing even faster than it used to, just by adding in this Herald of Blood. Now the downside of Herald of Blood is that you need strength. You have to have strength in order to use it. I'm using a level 18 here. You can go lower if you want to keep your strength requirements lower, but that's a 75 strength requirement, whereas previously the requirement for strength for this build was like, I don't know, like 40 or something. So you do have to have more. I got a really well-rolled Headhunter here, so that's ultimately taking care of the strength requirements. So we got 79 strength. Perfect, right? Now, you don't have to use a Headhunter. Obviously, you could still use a Rizlotha's Coil, or, I mean, there are a lot of belt options. But you will have to get the strength from somewhere else if you're going to use that. You know, if you're going to use Herald of Blood, you're going to have to get strength from somewhere else in order to be able to make it work. Now, the positive of not having multi-shot anymore, as much as I liked the like free extra projectiles it gave, the extra bit of clear that it gave, is that the skill comes out faster and it does more damage per hit, so you're actually going to have a lot better clear in like more juicy content. You know, I found that immediately upon taking multi-shot out, even though it was like a little bit lower, more chance to miss enemies basically by just being like bad at the third-person shooter. You have like just a lot more damage on enemies, especially rares in maps. So like more juicy content is like just suddenly 20% easier to clear, which is good. The other thing that we've added in is the Rhoa Mount here, and the Rhoa Mount is really simple. It just allows you to run and gun very, very, very effectively. You know, it gives you that 15% move speed bonus, which is crazy, and then an 80% reduced move speed penalty from using skills while mounted. You know, we all know it. Every Lightning Arrow character is using this, and yeah, we've triangulated to be a little bit more similar to Lightning Arrow, but still scaling our damage very, very differently, still way under budget compared to Lightning Arrow. And like still tanky as hell, and now we're just getting like this kind of like shooting and moving, and so because of that, you don't need running assault. Like this is a less move speed penalty from using skills while moving, so if we were to spec into this, instead of 80% reduced move speed while attacking, we'd be getting 90%. I don't think you'd be able to tell the difference. So like hypothetically speaking, we could maybe put those points into something like freedom of movement or whatever. I've obviously put them into Traveler's Wisdom for 6 more passive points, which is a big damage boost. You know, ultimately what I went with was just like Throat Seeker for just a lot more crit damage bonus, like a lot more. And then also Killer Instinct for just a ton more damage here as well. We're usually on full life, so that's basically just 60% increased attack damage. Pretty huge. There are a lot of other options around the tree that you could go with. You could go with Cooked. This is a massive damage bonus, but I don't love the idea of minus, like, you know, 25% reduced global defenses. It feels a little rough to do, so I opted not to go with that. Vile Wounds is a great option for more damage. You could come over here to Blur and get move speed and evasion rating and a bit more dex to help with stat budget. That is an option. Little annoying to spend points on either Flask or accuracy that you don't really need, but you know, that is definitely a thing you could do as well. Also, if you really wanted to like make clearing super easy in maps, you could take Low Tolerance. It's not a great bonus. In single target, it's like basically worthless, but it's effectively just 60% increased damage from your poisons if you're just shooting one arrow into a pack of enemies. Like, it's gonna really increase the damage on the first enemy that you hit, which is okay. Obviously, I didn't opt to go for this, but it is a thing you could do. Okay, so obviously the Rhoa gives you like move speed, gives you this ability to attack while moving without any slows or anything. That's obviously good. I'll just mention the support gems that I'm using with it. So you can use Brutus's Brain. I think that this is a really good support gem because it means your Rhoa will never get killed. So if you want to drop off of him and cast like Despair, because you can't cast Despair while you're mounted on the Rhoa, you can only use bow skills. You know, like I'm hitting it and it's not going off, right? So like at the start of bossing, or like map bosses, I'll drop off and drop a Despair, and then mount back up, and then do the normal combo of like Gas Arrow and just Toxic Growth until the monsters or the boss is dead, basically. But Brutus's Brain makes it so that if for whatever reason he gets attacked, he won't die. So you can actually socket Loyalty in if Brutus's Brain is socketed, and I'm pretty confident, like 99% confident, that it makes that loyalty bonus stop working. The 10% of damage taken from hits is taken from your companion's life before you instead. You're still able to socket a Brutus's Brain in after loyalty though, so whatever, you can try it. And then because of that, because the monster's not damageable, you don't really need to do anything to juice their damage or tankiness. So I threw in a Minion Mastery because it's recommended. I think it was kind of a waste to basically put any jewels in. Like, I think you can just have like a level 18 or 19 or whatever Brutus's Brain, and then you're done. But I went ahead and put Maim and Blind in there. I think you could maybe even put like Cull. I think that monsters can still, not that they're gonna get a chance to, but I think they can still Cull even if they don't do any damage with their hits. But I don't know, and I don't really think it matters, because most of the time, 99% of the time when I'm on this Rhoa, I'm not jumping off for anything. And yeah, you know, that's kind of it with the Rhoa. Like, Rhoa is way better now than it was in the initial introduction in Dawn of the Hunt League. The fact that the heavy stun buildup dissipates if you go like a couple of seconds without getting hit works really well with evasion, so I almost never get knocked off the mount. So I did spend some time looking at alternatives, things you could swap in here, say instead of just this regular Sapphire, which right now we have a pretty good Sapphire. We got a combination of Energy Shield, Mana on Kill, which is great for sustaining mana. That 2% Mana on Kill is really huge. Magnitude of ailments inflicted and crit damage bonus. There's a lot of other things you could do. I did look at a lot of options in terms of Heart of the Well. I played around with the idea of doing like a Mana on Kill and damages extra chaos, and then either like crit chance or crit damage. Those can get very expensive, as you can see. We're talking 40 plus divines, and the damage gain that you get out of them, I think I imported a couple into PoB, was very small. We're looking at like 3% combined damage, and also losing effective health because you'd be losing like 150 to 200 energy shield. So I didn't really think it was worth it, but it is something you can play around with. All right, now for the big bad part of this. You have to get Spirit in order to be able to use that Rhoa. You know, you get the base 100 Spirit. You need that for Ghost Dance, Wind Dancer, and Herald of Blood. Where does the other 60 Spirit or 50 Spirit come from? You can use Precision. I maybe wouldn't use Precision. I maybe should switch over to Clarity, but you know, whatever. You can use whatever support aura in there. But you need 50 Spirit from somewhere. So the easiest place to get it is just through body armor. I think that's what I would recommend doing ultimately. You know, you have a lot of options for body armor. I think ideally the best base for body armor isn't really a Falconer's Jacket. It's not like the highest in terms of evasion and energy shield, but it does give you move speed. I bought this one that has spirit resistances and then just a high amount of evasion and energy shield because it was cheaper than getting essentially the same stats on a Falconer's Jacket. It was just like half the price. I think this was like 4 or 5 divines, the sleek jacket that I'm looking at here, whereas like the closest thing I could find on a Falconer's with 60 spirit was, you know, like double-digit divines. So that is certainly something to bear in mind. Obviously, I think I would rather have the move speed. I might, like, literally as soon as I'm done recording, try to get one with like a Falconer's Jacket with basically the same stats, because I do like to go fast, and another 5% move speed would be pretty good. But there is another way to get Spirit, and that would be in Against the Darkness over in this section of the tree. You know, we're taking Stupefy and Dizzying hits and all 3 of these crit-based bonuses over here. So that's if you get a Against the Darkness in this area that has 10 Spirit for each notable in the area, that's 50 Spirit. If you get 12 per, then that would be 60 Spirit. So that's an option. The issue with those jewels is, again, if we could pull up the trade search here, if you're looking for one with like damages, extra chaos, and Spirit, prepare to pay 150 divines. If you just want one with, let's just say, 10 Spirit, already pre-rolled, you know, 57 nulls or whatever, like 14 divines, you know, that's a little on the expensive side. Not like unbearably expensive, but a little expensive for sure. If you want one that's pre-rolled to 12 Spirit each, then that's 20 divines. So a little bit expensive, but again, not completely unmanageable, but you are losing a lot of damage by not having an Against the Darkness damage bonus. Like the 4% damage is extra chaos in this area is granting 13% damage. You know, it's going to definitely be a pretty big loss to drop that. Yeah, I think just according to this, 12.6% damage coming out of that jewel. You know, it's kind of hard to give up. So you basically have to make that decision of, do you either want to lose the energy shield and evasion that comes from your body armor in order to get Spirit, which I think is the more cost-effective option, but it is kind of painful defensively, or do you want to lose a massive amount of damage by dropping damage out of it Against the Darkness and just getting one with Spirit, or, you know, do you want to lose a ton of divines by getting one that gives you damage and Spirit and costs you like 150 divines? Ultimately, the choice is up to you. I think the third one sounds the best if you've got the divines like clicking around to go buy a jewel that looks like this. You know, I think I would do that if I had the currency on hand to do it and wanted to burn it just on this one jewel that's, you know, pretty much just for this one build. But that is up to you to make that decision. All right, so everything that I've said thus far really just corresponds to mapping. You know, obviously, if you're wanting to do bossing, Headhunter's not going to really, like, we're talking pinnacle bosses and stuff, Headhunter's really not going to do you any good, so I wouldn't really recommend running it for that. You also don't really need Herald of Blood if you're, you know, farming Zesht or Arbiter of Ash or whatever. That's not going to do anything for you. I mean, I guess Zesh's is a bad example because there's all the trash before the boss, but, you know, if you're doing, whatever, King in the Mist, it's not going to do any good for you. Same with Headhunter. Same with Rhoa, for that matter, really. So I do think that the previous setup is kind of better for bossing. The one thing I could maybe say in support of Rhoa is that it does help you, like, move around very quickly in bossing. So if you're confident in your ability to move and not get hit and not need to roll, you know, that's definitely, like, an advantage, I would say, for bossing in maps. Just map bossing, I found it to be pretty effective for that. All right, that is pretty much it. I have done, like, an evaluation of a lot of the gear on this character and thought about making some upgrades, like trying to get a better base helmet with basically the same stats, but just more of them. And, you know, maybe it's something I'll pursue doing, but honestly, I feel like I almost never die. The combination of energy shield and evasion is so strong, even with the reduced level, to make the spirit work. It's really impressive just how strong this build became, like, on... I mean, not that it's a budget build, you know, it's wearing a headhunter and stuff, but, like, on a relatively low budget, I feel like this thing is annihilating in-game content in a way that I really didn't expect it to ever have reached when we first started putting it together. It really has become everything that I think we wanted the Toxic Rain PoE 2 successor to be. I think it has done that and really exceeded it. It really feels like the culmination of the build. Maybe it's not, I don't know, but the archetype of Poison Pathfinder is just incredible. I think there's still so much untapped potential here. Alright, that's it. That's Poison Pathfinder. It's still the month of October as well, so I'm going to recommend another spooky movie, and Poison Pathfinder, Pontypool. Highly recommend that movie, big fan. Be sure to like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video, and join the Skipping Sleep Studio Discord and become part of our community. And finally, thank you to all of our channel members. If you want to support us so we can keep making more PoE content, become a channel member or come boost the Discord. Thanks for watching. Bye.